So this is Hans Tammen, a sound artist, composer, musician, leader of many ensembles, who I had the luck to meet at a residency in 2018. While we were there, there was a community day in which we had to perform. We were asked to maybe develop a collaboration, and it was really marvelous, and it was the seed of this project.
And this is Mónica de la Torre, and she's a poet. I had the feeling that when we made our collaboration and we played, this was poetry that speaks to me. That was poetry that was also presented in a way that I, as a sound artist, can react to. And I'm very glad that we got it together.
When we started talking about this project, we had in mind that it would be shown here on Governor's Island. And one of the things I personally love about being here is the trees and how old the trees are. You know, trees branch out, and you never know exactly how they're going to grow.
Correct.
So that was the initial idea. I came in the early spring when trees hadn't bloomed, but then the others are inspired by the trees of Governor's Island, in particular London plane trees, which were the favorite trees of Robert Moses, and apparently they're the most common trees on the island.
I was approaching the project from a listening experience. Music is, sound is such an abstract art. You cannot make a clear connection between a word like magnolia and then here's a specific sound that's coming. But I also like the audience to come up with their own conclusion. I'm a big favor for art that doesn't explain themselves. I like Adorno's dictum that art says something without saying it. So when we were working together, we were discussing what the part of the poem, how does it react to things, and I was more from an emotional perspective, responding with notes, with sounds, with noises that resemble a little bit how I felt about the poem. The piece is an installation, which is a multi-channel installation that reacts a lot to the space. So I'm really thinking hard about, like, where is the sound coming from, where is it moving, and how does it relate to the location where you're in, which is, of course, as soon as you bring the piece to a different location, would be totally different.
I love that notion because maybe more people go to poetry readings than actually buy books and read them at home. But very few people actually explore any options outside the conventional thing of just getting up there, and it's never interactive. So to have the opportunity to explore these concepts with Hans was really, really, really interesting to me. And one thing I want to say about what you were saying about Adorno and that beautiful kind of summary of spatialization in music is that, and also not telling people what to think. That often is my approach to poetry in general. There's a beautiful phrase that a poet who I love called Lynn Ingenium uses. She just passed away actually, but she used the term, like, in a poem, all the words of the poem are maximally excited. Every word is doing something. And so that's exactly what the response, your response, and the music and the sounds, that's what's generated.
As you mentioned, interactivity. I would also like to talk about the technology for 1 minute, because the software that I wrote for this is an interactive software. I mean, this is not random, it's like controlled randomness, but I allow the software to make decisions within a certain bandwidth or so. So I have not, in that sense, complete control over everything that the software does, but I give it some freedom to decide on its own.
That type of response, here we have software responding, right? But that is, it's kind of like a metaphor for the way in which one responds to poetry. So writing from the perspective of, this will be an interactive process where the listener is completing the poem and taking it in the direction that they want to take it. A poem that's open enough for that is much more interesting to me than a poem in which I want to make sure that they get it. But at the same time, I'm thinking, for instance, of, since you brought up Adorno, you just inspired me to think about critical theory. And Kristeva, Julia Kristeva, how she talks about like what's been under language, like the affect and the way we, like in the grain of the voice, the pitch, the intonation, etc. There's so much information that cannot be conveyed through language, and it's there. So it happens like when you're listening to poetry in a different language, a language you don't speak. You're hearing all these things and you're understanding them, but you can't put them into words. But you're getting the affect of the poem. Yeah. And it's in a way what your software is doing.
Happy and so these would be my emotions if they're there, right?
Right.
Because, and absolutely, I get these emotions if I hear a speech in a language that I do not understand. That's correct, right? But the software does not know what you're saying, because there's no AI stuff in it or whatever, and I also don't need it. I am purely responding as I do with my music, and as the software does, because I wrote it that way, it responds to the sound, the sonic environment. And I'm also not so happy with this, especially with the current AI discussion, where you give, where the idea is to give computers or technology all these human characteristics and so on. We probably just, the only thing we're getting out of it is like more people killed by war machines or whatever. And I like that this is something that is separate.
Right, alien to us, right? As opposed to mirroring us. Like we don't need to code things so that they tell us what we already know. One sentence conclusion for me would be, this is just the beginning.
But if you want to do the present, go to Governor's Island on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays until August 20th and experience our work. Mónica's poetry is out there, and this is what I like.
And your sound is definitely out there.
So we can meet in a different universe where everybody's out there.